we'll be going over altering colors, ContentAwareFill, resizing images, and saving as a JPEG. Begin with the garden photo open. If you do not already have this open in your workspace, choose File, Open from the top menu bar, and navigate to where your document is. I will open the trampoline image to show you how that works. So now we can toggle between our two documents that we have open. We will be beginning on the garden document. I always like to start every project by making a copy of the background layer. You can do so in one of 3 different ways. You can drag it down to the Add Layer button to make a copy. Double click in order to rename that layer. Or I can go up to these 3 little lines, click Duplicate Layer, or of course I can right click on the image using 2 fingers on my mouse pad, click, and duplicate the layer that way. So however you duplicate the layer is just a good habit to get into in order to protect your original. So in order to change the color of some of these flowers, I'm going to do this selectively by telling Photoshop which areas I want to have as an active selection or which areas I want to alter. So there are several very sophisticated selection tools that Photoshop has in the toolbar. So if you look up here on the left where my cursor is jumping, you'll see 3 different categories of selection tools. So my first are the marquee tools. I can select obviously in like a rectangle. If I were to use my move or this move tool up here at the top, I would cut and that could be moved around. Now I have to be careful if I deselect, and Photoshop makes it difficult to deselect on purpose so that you don't make a mistake and spend a lot of time making a selection and then whoops, accidentally clicking off of it and it goes away. So it's very hard to get rid of a selection without meaning to. What you'll notice is that there are marching ants, what we call marching ants around the perimeter. It's showing us what our active selection is. So if I wanted to deselect that, I could hit Command D, or I could go up to the select menu and choose deselect. So now this is a permanent part of that layer. I cannot go and move that again and reclaim the pixels beneath it. It eats the pixels underneath of it. So if I were to try and use this move tool again, you'll notice that there's nothing there underneath. Now I could, if I click on the selection tool, I could move that selection around. So for example, Command D, say I make a selection over here, and then I try, making sure that it's the this first option up here on the options bar. This is making a new selection each time. So each time I click and drag, it makes a new selection. Or if I click inside of the selection, I can move it around without cutting out the photo. This is add to selection. So I can just keep clicking and dragging and clicking and dragging and continue adding to my selection if I would like. This one is subtract from selection. So I can click and drag and take away from that selection. And again, the move tool is how I would move that around the document. So now obviously, Command D, I have really messed up this layer beyond repair. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, drag it to the trash, and now make another copy of my background, and I am all set to go. Another one of the marquee tools is the elliptical marquee. So you can use this to select in circles. So say I want to affect this flower here, I can reposition my selection. Say I want to transform my selection, I can go up to the select menu, go down to transform selection, and just kind of scoot those boundaries in a little bit so that I can really get a good basic selection here. Hit enter to apply. And at this point, I may want to feather my edge. If I were just to use my move tool and crop that, it's obviously a very sharp edge, which I may or may not want. So with any of the selection tools highlighted, I can go up here to the options bar. Remember, a lot of the things we may need to do with a certain tool can be found up here on the options bar. And I'm going to click on selected mask. Now I like to view a mask on red just because I find it's easier to see than any of these other ones. The onion skin might be okay. But I like the overlay because it makes it very obvious where my selection is and what the background, showing which part I do not have selected. So I might, at this point, change a couple of things. Maybe I feather that edge so you can really see how that changes the softness of that edge there. So then I click OK. And then if I were to cut my photo out, you can see I have more of a fuzzy edge on my selection here. But I'm not going to make a selection with that tool. There are probably better tools for me to use. The next category down, and on the elliptical marquee, if you want a perfect circle, you have to hold shift. Same with perfect square. So the next category of tools down are the lasso tools. So the very first one is kind of a freeform selection. The next one down is a polygonal lasso. So this selects based on straight lines. So if you had like a house or some type of geometric shape to select, that one can be very helpful. And then the last one is the magnetic lasso. This one allows you to click and just kind of like zip along an edge of contrast. And if you mess up, oops, it's gotten too far off the perimeter, I can hit the delete key and go back in time until before I messed up. And then you just kind of work your way all the way around. And then my favorite category of selection tools, the ones I use the most and find the most helpful in the Photoshop workspace, are these quick selection tools here. So we have just the basic quick selection tool, which allows you to click and drag your selection tool to find an area that's all the same color, basically. So it kind of selects by color. So you can click and drag, click and drag. I'm on add to selection, so if I want to make a new one each time, I change that on the options bar and just click. And if you want to make your cursor bigger, you can hit the right bracket key on your keyboard. Left bracket key makes it smaller, or you can go up here to the, here it is, the brush preset picker to change the brush size on this one. Now on most options, for tools, you'll have a brush size indicator because a lot of tools work with brushes such as the paintbrush or like the clone stamp or the eraser. So a lot of them work with these same brush options here. Okay, so another one of the quick selection tools is the object select tool. This one's even easier. So it also selects by color, but you can see you'll hover over different pieces of this document and it will show you the selectable areas. So I can just click and there it has it. I can just click and there it is, click. So it does a really good job of finding the outline of that object. So that's one of the newer tools in Photoshop that uses AI. And then finally, we have the magic wand tool. This is more helpful if you have like a solid color background, like on my trampoline image here, something that's solid. It might select like this trampoline really well. And again, I always like to make a copy of the background in case I mess up. But you can just click and it will select based on color. Obviously, the sky is a little bit too complicated. I remembered that being a simpler sky. Okay, so you can select based on color and just keep adding to the selection until you have all of the pixels that you want. If you want to select everything in the whole document that is that shade of yellow, then you would take off this contiguous check mark and then click and it selects all of the pixels in the document that are that same color. And you can change the tolerance to make it select a wider range of pixels that are similar. So it'll accept like oranges and yellows by making it 100. And then you see how much more range of color it accepts. And then if you turn that tolerance down to say 10, then when you click it, it finds a much smaller range of color. Okay, so those are the selection tools that you have available. Use any of those selection tools that you would like. I'm going to stick with the object select tool because I think it's pretty easy to use to select one of the flowers. I'm going to start over here. We're going to look at how to alter color. This might be something that comes up in your Anything Goes project, but it's more likely to come up in the Brilliant Color project or even the black and white assignment when you may want to add a color accent and highlight just one color in the document and make everything else black and white. So we're going to start by selecting one of the flowers and copy and paste this flower to a new layer. Again, 2 or 3 ways to do anything in Photoshop, multiple ways to do this. You could go up to the edit menu, go down to copy, edit, paste, and voila, here is my layer 1. I could also hit Command C and Command V in order to create that layer. So you can see that that's the only thing I have on layer 1. I like using these little eyeball icons over here in the layers panel to see what I have on each layer. That helps me stay organized. So I'm going to title this Flower 1. So again, I remember which one it is. And now we're just going to change the color. To do this, I am going to use the hue saturation adjustment layer. So we talked about how in my last video, I like to always have the adjustment panel open because I use them a lot. Most photos or layers or individual pieces of an image need some form of adjustment, whether that be a little bit more brightness, a little bit more contrast, maybe a slight alteration to the hue saturation levels. So all of that stuff is right here. Even if you wanted to make your image black and white, it's right here. And this is kind of cool because then you can adjust just the yellows in your black and white document or just the reds. So make sure you shoot on color at all times and then make your photo black and white in Photoshop, because if you shot in black and white, you wouldn't have all of these options. Okay, so I'm going to delete that for now because that's not what I'm doing. I am going to add a hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'm on my flower layer. I add hue saturation. If you don't see them displayed this way, change the view to classic view. I don't like the modern view because everything, you have to like scroll. I like it all being in one area. Okay, so I'm going to add my hue saturation adjustment layer, and you can see what it does when I drag this hue slider. It changes the colors of everything. It looks very artificial, right? It's not very convincing. It doesn't look like planet Earth even. So instead, what I'm going to do, instead of changing the whole document, I'm going to click on this little button at the bottom to clip this adjustment layer just to the layer below it. So it has a little arrow pointing down, indicating that this is the layer that this adjustment layer is affecting. So now when I move my slider, the hue is only affecting that one flower. So make it something else. We can make it purple. We can make it red. We could make it anything. And if it looks sort of artificial, that like the center of the flower is also that altered color, because you'll notice the other flowers all kind of have a different colored center, then I notice there's a mask on this layer. So you can like invisible, visible, invisible, visible. The mask allows you to make only certain parts visible, if you'd like to look at it that way. Because a mask, you put it on your face, hides most of your face. You can see your eyes, etc. So you can control which part of that image or that layer will show through. So I'm going to use my paintbrush at this point to alter this mask. I'm going to make my brush smaller with the left bracket key, or again, the brush preset picker up here at the top. And I'm going to make sure that my hardness is turned down so that it's not such a harsh transition. I want it to be kind of a soft edge. So I want to paint with black, because on my mask, anywhere that's white is revealed, anywhere that's black is hidden. So now if I paint with black on that mask, watch what happens. It erases that effect so that we can kind of see through that layer. So we're hiding just that part. Now I may want to switch back to white here in my foreground color, make my brush smaller, and maybe go back and forth. Maybe I want a little bit less of the yellow because the yellow is kind of bugging me. A little artificial looking. So that's the nice thing with mask, is that it's non-destructive. I could go back and forth as many times as I want. Those pixels are not deleted. They're just hidden. So they're still there. Okay, so that looks like a pretty good option for altering the color. It's hard to tell what we did, but here's that hue saturation adjustment layer. Now, the next way that, and there's many, many ways to change the color, but another way would be to replace the color. So we're going to make another selection, say maybe this flower up here. You can choose any of the flowers you'd like. So go back to the background copy. 9 times out of 10, if something's not working, it's because of what layer you're on. So check your layer, go back to the background copy. This time maybe explore a different selection tool, like maybe the quick selection tool. So I'm just going to click and drag. And then I am going to copy and paste it to a new layer again. So edit copy, edit paste. And then we'll see that now I just have that flower on that layer. So I'm going to call this flower 2 and reveal my background. Okay, so here's flower 2. For this one, I'm going to make a destructive edit. So the difference between a non-destructive edit and a destructive one is the non-destructive edits, such as this hue saturation layer, can be taken off. It's not a permanent change to the layer below it. But if I change this layer itself, flower 2, by applying, say, a filter or something like that, then it's going to be a permanent change. So that's why we call it destructive, because you can't ever go back and take that off unless you can do edit undo or something like that. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer this way. Under image adjustments, this time I'm going to go down to replace color. And now you can see what I have. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool in this and click somewhere within flower 2. And there it appears. So now I can slide the hue slider to change the color of that in order to make it look a little bit less yellow. Oh, here it is. You can change the fuzziness to accept more or less of that color. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, let's make it something different than flower number 1. We'll make it kind of reddish. There we go. Okay, so that's the replace. So that's the replace color adjustment layer added under the image menu. And then the final step on this document, we're going to select one more flower. This time I want you to select one of the white flowers or the lightest flowers available. Sometimes that can prevent a challenge in altering the color because there's not a lot of color there to begin with. So if it's just white or black, it doesn't really add a hue. So you almost have to add your own hue on a layer above. So I'm going to go back to this background copy, choose my object select tool again, hover over my flower, select it, and copy and paste, Command C, Command V onto its own layer. This is flower 3, and you can see what I have on that layer by turning off everything else and then kind of toggling between visible and invisible. Okay, so on this one now, I know that I want to change the color, say maybe make it blue, like some of these blue flowers next to it. But if I just went to the hue saturation adjustment layer, and even if I linked it to the one below it, it doesn't quite get to blue. It's blue in the shadows, but it's not blue in the highlights because it's kind of a light colored flower. So instead of going with the hue saturation adjustment layer, I'm just going to select these pixels. So you have to click on the thumbnail itself and then choose select pixels. And then I'm going to add a blank layer. And this time just fill it with whatever color I want. So I want blue, like a darker blue than it gave me. And then I'm just going to fill, this is a blank layer, so I'm just going to call it blue. And then I'm just going to fill it with that color. So we're going to look in just a minute at the fill options under the edit menu. This is sort of a little introduction to that. If you go to the edit menu, go down to fill, you can choose from several different options for this, make it foreground color. So this is the foreground color down here, foreground, background. The foreground color in this case is blue. So we're going to fill it with blue. Obviously that looks super artificial, no highlights or shadows, right? Flat color. So now I have to make it blend in with the flower below it. There's different ways to do this. I can change the blending mode up here at the top of my layers panel from normal to anything else. So you can kind of hover over it. Ooh, that one's kind of cool. And see what some of these effects do. So this top category will darken where the layers overlap. This lightens. This creates some contrast. That one might be nice. And this create difference, like the opposite. Another option, if none of those work, is just to lower the opacity on that blue layer. And then maybe add one of your adjustment layers. I really like color burn a lot. Overlay tends to be a good one. And then we can even add an adjustment layer from there to kind of reinforce that blue quality. There we go. And then if you want to add a brightness contrast adjustment layer, you can just keep going. Yeah, to make it look a little bit more realistic. So you can add as many of these as you want, as it takes. So that's how to replace color, or 3 different ways to replace color in a document in Photoshop. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you is the ContentAwareFill. So I have my jumper over here on the trampoline, and I'm going to replace him with some other fun character in the sky, some other type of animal. So in order to make a basic selection, you're saying, I don't know, I don't want exactly his outline, but I kind of want around him. I'm just going to give him a little bit of breathing room by clicking and dragging with the lasso tool. So I don't want to cut off his leg or anything like that. I want him well within the boundary of this selection. And then what I can do is go up to the edit menu, and this is pretty cool. I'm going to use AI within Photoshop in order to fill this area with what would be the background if he were not there. So I'm going to go to fill, so edit fill, and then choose content aware from the drop-down menu. When you click OK, it should use its AI smarts to guess what should be there based on what's around it. So it did a pretty good job. You can see this is before, this is after. So it altered, this area a little bit, altered the clouds over here, but overall it did a pretty good job of guessing what should be there. I would not know otherwise that he had been there. And now I'm going to place some other animal in this scene to make it kind of funny. So I'm going to place a shark. So I go to File, Place Embedded, and that's how I can bring one photograph into another. So I'm going to open a new photograph on a separate file, or place a new photograph within this same document. So File, Place Embedded, grab my shark image here. And now I need to make a selection of the shark. Let's see how well the Object Select tool works. Supposed to find him. It worked pretty good. Okay, so there's my shark. I can hide the background. I like to use masks as often as possible because they're non-destructive. So I can just click on the little mask button here at the bottom of the layers panel and hide the background. Here's my giant shark. If I want to resize it, I can go up to the edit menu and go down to free transform. So now I have a bounding box to make him smaller, hover outside the corner in order to rotate. Maybe he's doing a somersault or something like that. He's a very athletic shark. All right. You could even do something like puppet warp. If I hit enter. Oh, you know what? I think I have to apply this. Let's try this a different way. So I'm going to click on this guy, make a selection here, and this time I'm going to edit and paste. So edit, copy, edit, paste. So there's different ways. First way I showed you was to use a mask. It's non-destructive. We kind of saw some of the benefits of masking earlier. One of the benefits of having just the pixels that you need on this shark layer, and I just hid the other one. That one's hidden. Is I can add a puppet warp. So if you go under edit, go down to puppet warp, I can now place some anchor points of areas that I want to stay still and kind of stretch him out. Make him look like he's swimming or something. So that's kind of cool. That's pretty neat, isn't it? Apply. Okay, so now he kind of looks like he's swimming in midair. So here he was before and after. Just something fun. I didn't even know I was going to show you that, but that's what happens when you do it live. All right, so I would paste a couple of flowers in here if you want to practice copy and pasting. So make a selection, maybe with the quick selection tool, get a couple of flowers from this scene to paste somewhere on your trampoline document. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that, edit copy, and now I can go back to the trampoline, edit paste, just to combine these two photos. Oh, and look what happened. I get to have a teachable moment here. So the reason it copied over just white and not the image itself is because I was on the wrong layer. So notice I'm on an adjustment layer. I need to go to the actual background copy. Now copy the pixels on this layer. Photoshop is very layer specific. You always have to be on the right layer. So 9 times out of 10, if something's not working, it's because you're on the wrong layer. So edit copy. This time it'll work. Edit paste. And then we're going to place it somewhere in our document that it makes sense. Maybe I might reflect this and have some other flowers over here, or I could just select these flowers at the top. Command D to deselect. Quick selection tool, drag in order to add to the selection. And let's see how that looks. Okay, let's choose, make sure we're on the right layer. Yep. Edit copy, edit paste, or you could use your move tool, grab this selection, drag it up to this layer, and then drag it down and let go. Now notice it didn't keep the color that I altered. This is the original color because I was only on one layer. So if I want that to have the purple and the red flower, I have to flatten this image, or I can hold Shift and at least merge these layers. So right click, merge layers. So now those are all on one layer. So that can be helpful. Okay, now let's try it. Drag it up to this tab, drag it down, let go. And now I can position them and I have this nice, beautiful garden in front of my trampoline and this beautiful shark swimming in the air. Okay, thank you so much for watching and happy Photoshopping.